There is a watch that costs $5, and there is a watch that costs $5 million. Both tell time, both have hands, both sit on your wrist doing exactly the same job. So why would anyone in their right mind spend $5 million on something a $5 watch already does perfectly? The answer has nothing to do with time. It never did. What you wear on your wrist is one of the last things in the modern world that still silently communicates exactly who you are, your wealth, your taste, your status, without you saying a single word. And the people who make these watches know that better than anyone. This is every level of watch explained. From the $5 Casio that never dies, to the $5 million Richard Mille that most people will never even be allowed to touch. And somewhere in between, there is a very dark line, the point where a watch stops being a tool and becomes a weapon. Let's start at the beginning. The Casio F91W costs $15. It has been in continuous production since 1991. It runs on a single battery that lasts 7 years. It is water resistant. It has a stopwatch, an alarm, and an LED backlight. It has survived wars, natural disasters, and 30 years of fashion trends without changing a single thing about itself. It is arguably the most reliable timekeeping device ever made. Here is what makes this watch interesting. The Casio F91W is the most worn watch in the world. More units of this single model have been sold than any luxury watch brand's entire lifetime output combined, and it became infamous for a completely unexpected reason. In the early 2000s, US military intelligence discovered that the Casio F91W was the preferred watch of Al-Qaeda bomb makers, not because of any feature specific to terrorism, but because it was cheap, reliable, globally available, and left no trace. It was the perfect anonymous tool. The US government actually began using watch ownership as a factor in Guantanamo detention decisions. A $15 watch became a geopolitical indicator. That is the kind of cultural weight this tiny plastic object carries. And it hasn't changed a thing about itself since, at the next level, something shifts. You are no longer just buying a tool. You are buying the idea of quality. The feeling that you have stepped up from the mass market into something that requires a little more consideration. The kings of this tier are Seiko and Orient, two Japanese brands that have been quietly making exceptional watches for over a century. A Seiko Presage at $300 contains a movement, the mechanical heart of the watch that is entirely designed, manufactured, and assembled in Japan. At that price point, that is extraordinary. But here is the uncomfortable truth about this level. Most people who buy watches here are buying the brand story, not the watch. And the brand story is largely marketing. At $300, you are paying for a feeling of arrival. The watch tells time well. It looks respectable on your wrist, but the moment you walk into a room full of people who know watches, and they will know you are still invisible. This is the level where aspiration begins. And aspiration, as we will see, becomes increasingly expensive. This is where watchmaking starts to become genuinely interesting. Tissot, Longines, Hamilton, Tag Heuer. These are brands with real history, real heritage, real craft behind them. A Longines watch at $800 carries a movement that has direct lineage to movements worn by pilots in World War II. Hamilton made the watches worn by NASA astronauts in early space missions. Tag Heuer timed the first Formula One races. At this level, you are buying history. But there is something darker happening here too. Almost every brand in this tier is now owned by the Swatch Group, a single Swiss conglomerate that controls more of the watch industry than most people realize. Longines, Tissot, Hamilton, Omega, and even a movement supplier for many other brands, all under one roof. The independent heritage brand you think you're buying is often a product line managed by a corporation optimizing for margin. The craft is still real. The history is still real, but the romance is partly manufactured. Now we enter the territory where watches become social currency. A Tudor Black Bay, an Omega Seamaster, a Breitling Navitimer. These are watches that people notice, that people comment on, that signal something specific about the person wearing them. You have money, you have taste, you are serious. But this is also the most dangerous tier for a very specific reason. This is where the replica market is most aggressive. The most counterfeited watches in the world sit in this price range, because the gap between what a fake looks like and what the real thing looks like is almost invisible to the untrained eye. A $500 replica Omega Seamaster, bought from the right source, will fool 90% of the people who see it, and the person wearing it knows this, which raises an uncomfortable question. If the status signal works just as well with the fake, what exactly are you paying for with the real one? The answer is everything that happens inside the watch, the movement, the tolerances, the decades of engineering, the guarantee, the resale value. But if nobody can tell, and most people can't, then you're really paying for how it makes you feel. And that right there is where the watch industry wants you. Rolex is not the best watchmaker in the world. It is not the most technically advanced. It is not the most historically significant. There are dozens of brands that make more complicated, more impressive, more exclusive watches. But Rolex has done something no other watch brand has ever achieved. It has made a single name synonymous with success across every culture, every continent, and every generation simultaneously. A Rolex means the same thing in Tokyo, Lagos, London, and São Paulo. That kind of universal brand recognition is worth more than any technical achievement in watchmaking history. And the business model behind it is ruthless. Rolex is privately owned. It publishes no financial results. It controls its distribution absolutely. Watches are only sold through approved dealers, and approved dealers are given strict allocation limits. Popular models like the Submariner and the Daytona are deliberately undersupplied. The result is that the most popular Rolex models now sell for more on the secondary market than they do at retail. A steel Daytona with a retail price of around $15,000 regularly sells for $30,000 to $40,000 on the gray market. Rolex has created a situation where buying their watch at retail price is itself a privilege. Sound familiar? The Birkin Playbook. Executed with steel and sapphire crystal. There is an advertisement that Patek Philippe has been running since 1996. It shows a father and son, and the line reads, "You never actually own a Patek Philippe. You merely look after it for the next generation." That single sentence repositioned an entire product category. It is not a watch, it is an heirloom. It is not a purchase, it is a responsibility. It is not yours. It belongs to your children. The psychological shift that sentence creates is extraordinary. Because now you're not spending $30,000 on yourself. You are investing in your family's future. You are being responsible. You are thinking generationally. Patek Philippe manufactures around 60,000 watches per year. Rolex makes over 1 million. That constraint is the entire point. The most complicated Patek Philippe ever made, the Grandmaster Chime, sold at auction in 2019 for $31 million. It had taken 100,000 hours to develop. At this level, you are not buying a watch. You are buying a piece of human achievement, something that represents the absolute outer limit of what skilled hands and a lifetime of dedication can produce. Richard Mille was founded in 2001. That is not a typo. A brand that has existed for barely 20 years now produces watches that regularly sell for over $1 million. In an industry where brands like Patek and Rolex have centuries of heritage, Richard Mille arrived last week and immediately became the most expensive watch in the world. How? By doing everything the traditional watch industry said you should never do. Richard Mille used materials from Formula One racing, carbon fiber, titanium, sapphire crystal cases. The movements look like nothing else in watchmaking. Open, skeletal, almost industrial. They look like tiny machines because that is exactly what they are. And then they priced them in a way that made even established luxury brands look affordable. The result was that Richard Mille watches became the preferred choice of a specific kind of customer. The ultra-wealthy who found Rolex too common and Patek too traditional. Athletes, celebrities, billionaires who wanted something that looked like it was from the future. Rafael Nadal wore a Richard Mille on his wrist while playing professional tennis. A watch worth over $700,000, being worn in conditions that would destroy almost any other timepiece. That image, broadcast to millions of people watching the French Open, was worth more than any advertising campaign money could buy. Richard Mille understood something the old guard didn't. In the 21st century, the most powerful marketing is not a magazine ad. It is the right wrist, in the right moment, seen by the right audience. Here is what every level of watches actually reveals. At $15, you are buying function, pure and simple. At $15,000, you are buying identity. The watch tells the room something about you before you open your mouth. At $5 million, you are buying something else entirely, the absolute pinnacle of what human beings can make with their hands. A statement that money is so irrelevant to you that you spend $5 million on something that tells time. But here is the darkest truth of all. The watch industry, from Casio to Richard Mille, is built entirely on one single human emotion: the desire to be seen. Every person, at every level, is buying the same thing, just at different prices. The $15 Casio says, "I am practical, I don't care what you think." The $15,000 Rolex says, "I have made it." Look, the $5 million Richard Mille says, "I'm so far beyond your world that the concept of price no longer applies to me." Different watches, different prices. Same need. And the people who make these watches have spent decades, some of them centuries, perfecting the art of selling you that feeling. The only question is which level you are at, and how much you're willing to pay to feel it. Which level are you at? Drop it in the comments. And if you want the dark truth behind the world's most powerful brands every single week, subscribe to Dark Prestige.